What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brattle. Before we turn the page, look ahead to the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to take one last look back at the Packers' performance against the Carolina Panthers. Going behind the numbers, these are the key stats, key figures you need to know about from Green Bay's day. But first, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can find all my work over at Packers Wire, and you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettle. So, like I said, we're going to dive into the key stats, key figures that you need to know about from Green Bay's performance. You can find this in article version up over at Packers Wire. And let's start with Bryce Young, Panthers quarterback, who had a career day against the Green Bay Packers defense. First number to know, he averaged 8.7 yards per pass attempt against Green Bay. For some context, Bryce Young came into the game averaging just 5.5 yards per pass attempt. That ranked 32nd in the NFL. In general, he came into the game with only one previous performance where he had a passer rating over 100. He had only 4 games where he surpassed or eclipsed the 200-yard passing mark. And the Panthers' offense in general was on an 8-game streak before this game where they had not eclipsed the 15-point mark in the previous 8 performances. However, against Green Bay, Bryce Young averaged at 8.7 yards per pass attempt. And for some context, over the course of the NFL season, that figure would rank as the second highest average in the NFL. Again, just to show you how good of a performance it was, how efficient of a performance it was as well for Bryce Young. He ended up throwing for 312 passing yards, had a passer rating of 110, and as we all know, the Panthers put up 30 points on this Packers defense. I'll get to Joe Barry here in a second, but what I will say is there were adjustments made from last week to this week by the Packers defense. According to NFL Next Gen Stats, the Packers blitzed Young on 44% of his dropbacks. That rate is the highest this season for the Green Bay Packers. This zone-heavy defense also played man coverage on 64% of Bryce Young's dropbacks. Again, that's a season high for the Packers defense. So it's not as if Barry didn't make any changes, any adjustments from the last few weeks to this one. He did, but the players didn't play well. The secondary specifically, the trio of Eric Stokes, Jair Alexander, Keyshawn Nixon, according to Pro Football Focus, they allowed combined 13 receptions on 15 targets for 191 yards. That averages out to almost 15 yards per catch, and they gave up 2 touchdowns. They didn't have any pass breakups. As a team, on Bryce Young's 36 pass attempts, only 4 of those passes were contested, and the Panthers ended up catching 3 of them. It was not a good performance from the Green Bay Packers defense, and like I said, some adjustments were made by Joe Barry. Now, that doesn't absolve Joe Barry from the performance that we saw from this unit. Given how his tenure in Green Bay has unfolded, the last few weeks in particular, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. It was an opportunity for this group to bounce back against statistically one of the worst offenses in football, and they didn't do it. And really, that's the most discouraging part, given how the last 2 weeks in particular have unfolded. Joe Barry himself admitted this past week that, his back is against the wall. And with all that being true, all the outside noise over the last week that took place, the opportunity to bounce back, they didn't. This was the performance that we saw from the Green Bay Packers defense. And as they still cling to their playoff lives, it begs the question, if not now, when? When are things going to get better if it didn't in this performance? Back against the wall, opportunity to do so against, again, statistically one of the worst offenses in football, and you can't come through. The game plan didn't work, even though changes were made. The players didn't execute it on it well enough. Just another overall disappointing performance. And to answer my own question, saying when are things going to improve, they're not going to. Again, it felt like this was kind of it. If there was going to be some sort of bounce back, some sort of turnaround, you thought that this might be the matchup. But if they can't rise to the occasion against Carolina with everything that's gone on in the last week, it's probably not going to moving forward. Next number to know, 127 rushing yards for Aaron Jones. Coming into this game, it felt like the recipe was there for a big Aaron Jones game. Jones was removed from the injury report on Friday, did not have an injury designation. Green Bay Packers were shorthanded at receiver, entered the game without Christian Watson, without Jaden Reed. Dontavian Wicks ended up leaving at one point, and this is a Panthers defense that is similar to what the Packers run in the Joe Barry defense. As we all know, that defensive play style, when you're in quarters coverage, it's susceptible against a run because there's an unaccounted for gap when you live in that type of coverage scheme. Panthers entered the game ranked 31st in run defense DVOA. So you add all those pieces together, and again, it felt like a game where Aaron Jones had the opportunity for a big day. It felt like a game where the Packers were going to lean on the run game more so than what they typically do, and all that ended up happening. Jones rushed for 127 yards, averaged 6 yards per carry. He had 21 carries in the game. A.J. Dillon had another 7. And when there's the obvious, impact that Aaron Jones has with the ball in his hands, not just this year, but throughout his career with the Green Bay Packers. When he's at full capacity, full go, is getting, an ample amount of touches, this offense is just different when he's on the football field. There's what he does with the ball in his hands, and then there's the trickle-down effect of just his presence on the field. Defenses having to worry about him. When he's picking up chunk plays, setting the tone like he did early on. First 2 plays of the game, 10-yard run, 13-yard run. When you're able to, as an offense, find that success on the ground, stay ahead of the sticks, stay out of those obvious passing situations, and on any given play, defenses have to defend both the run and the pass, not knowing what's coming. That opens up opportunities in the passing game. There's the obvious off of play action, which Jordan Love has been very efficient with, but just in general, it creates better spacing and more, as the defense tries to stop the run, bring players closer to the line of scrimmage, opens up opportunities downfield as well. So just a massive trickle-down effect. Jordan Love talked about that after the game. Again, not only what Aaron Jones does with the ball in his hands, but just his presence on the field and when that run game is working. Next number to know, 104 receiving yards. That is what Tucker Kraft and Bo Melton combined for. As I just mentioned, Packers were shorthanded at the receiver position. As you all know, they also still don't have Luke Musgrave, who's still on injured reserve. A.J. Dillon was on a bit of a pitch count, you could tell, as he is still working through that broken thumb. So like Jordan Love said after the game, it's next man up. Other guys have to step up. And for the Packers, along with Romeo Doubs, a touchdown from Wicks before he exited the game, it was Tucker Kraft and it was Bo Melton. Tucker Kraft has... Matt LaFleur has said that Tucker Kraft has been one of the most improved players this season. And when given the opportunity because of Luke Musgrave's injury, he has absolutely capitalized on it. His trajectory from week 1 to where we are today as a blocker has continued to steadily improve. And we've seen that pass catching ability. He doesn't bring, his skill set from a pass catching standpoint compared to Luke Musgrave's. They're different, but both bring big play potential. Tucker Kraft, as we've seen on numerous occasions, yards after the catch ability, which is something he put on tape routinely during his time at South Dakota State, and you can see that there is that trust that's developing between him and Jordan Love. As far as Bo Melton, this was his 3rd game this season, second game in a row as a practice squad elevation, and Jason Vrabel, the wide receivers coach, talked about Bo Melton last week, specifically saying that he's earning these opportunities with what he's doing in practice. On special teams in practice, he is routinely making plays on offense in practice as well. He's coming up with a play or two each practice in recent weeks. And Vrabel was talking about the progress that they're seeing from Bo Melton, and that's earning him opportunities on Sundays that, credit to him, he's taken advantage of. Without Christian Watson, without Luke Musgrave, having Bo Melton on the field, who ran a 4.34 coming out of college during the pre-draft process, gives this offense a little extra juice, a little extra speed. And not only in the passing game, but we've seen him used often as a motion man. The Packers even gave him an opportunity with a touch behind the line of scrimmage. So like Jordan Love said, players, it's next man up. Players have to step up. And in this game, Tucker Kraft, Bo Melton were big contributors to the passing game for Green Bay. Next number to know, Jordan Love has put together 3 go-ahead drives in the final minutes in the last 6 games for the Packers. So as this game ended, of course, Jordan Love and the offense drove down the field, put Anders Carlson in field goal range, knocked it through, and ended up being a game-winning drive, barely, thanks to the Packers defense. But that is now the 3rd time in the last 6 games that Jordan Love has put together that go-ahead drive in the final minutes. He did it against the New York Giants. Fortunately, the defense couldn't come through in that game, and he did it against the Los Angeles Chargers as well. It wasn't that long ago that these type of injuries, missing Watson, missing Jaden Reed, Wicks leaving, that would have absolutely derailed this Packers offense. And And the fact that they still up 33 points, they still average 5.9 yards per play over the course of the game goes to show just the immense amount of growth that this offense has had. And credit to Ejiro Evero, Panther, defensive coordinator. He did make adjustments in the second half. Matt LaFleur talked about that after the game. Packers had a stretch on offense where they had a couple 3-and-outs in a row. But again, when it was crunch time, when it mattered most, the Packers were able to put together that final scoring drive. And in Jordan Love's last 5 games, he's completed 68.8% of his passes at 7.3 yards per attempt with 11 touchdowns to 1 interception. He's playing really, really good football right now. And his performance from a number standpoint on Sunday, 17 of 28, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns. That figure on its own isn't going to leap off the page by any means. But again, when you factor in everything just discussed, the game-winning drive, the being shorthanded at the receiver position, and the fact that the offense still was able to move the ball fairly consistently, the fact that they put up 33 points. That's the first time since week 1 that this offense has eclipsed the 30-point mark in a game. The fact that all that was still able to happen in what has seemingly become, again, on paper, kind of just a ho-hum performance from Jordan Love, that, again, just shows the growth about where he's at as a quarterback, that performance has, to a degree, kind of become the norm, for lack of a better term, in terms of what is, expected of him, what he's able to do in the passing game for this Packers offense. And that's what good quarterbacks are. That's what good quarterbacks do. Find a way to win at the end of games. And at the end of the day, their average, quote unquote, performances are still really, really good performances. And not that there aren't areas of improvement for Love. Again, Packers had that stretch of 3-and-outs where they didn't quite counter the Carolina adjustments. There were some times where you could tell Love was sped up a little bit, which led to some inaccurate passes. Again, none of this is to say there aren't room for improvement, but really, really sound, solid performance from Jordan Love, who from start to finish just felt in complete control of this game. Next up, next number to know, Packers were 3 for 4 in the red zone. I talked about this coming into Sunday's game. This is an area where the team as a whole had struggled the last few weeks. Understandably so. The defense has caught the brunt of the heat against Tampa Bay, against New York, for how those games ended. But the Packers' performance on offense in the red zone, they contributed to those losses as well. The good news during those 2 games is that they had 10 red zone visits. 5 in each game. Again, for some context, the Dallas Cowboys went into Week 16 leading the NFL with 4.2 red zone trips per game this season. So Packers, the last 2 weeks coming into the Carolina game, they had 5. They were moving the ball. They were able to get into scoring position, but unfortunately they weren't able to punch it in. On 10 of those visits, only 4 of them ended in a touchdown for the Green Bay Packers. But the Panthers defense provided a bit of a remedy for Green Bay in that regard. Panthers entered the game on Sunday allowing a touchdown on 71%, highest in the NFL, 71% of their opponents' red zone visits, and the Packers were able to take advantage of those opportunities, scoring 3 touchdowns on 4 attempts inside the 20-yard line. And in a game that ended in just a 3-point victory, each one of those possessions absolutely mattered and ended up being a difference maker in this game. This past week when Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, Elton Jenkins, pretty much didn't matter who you asked when they're talking about the team's red zone performance previously. They chalked it up to just a lack of execution in that part of the field, not necessarily responding well to what defenses were doing to them inside the 20-yard line. And I think some other products of that come from the run game. The run game has definitely improved the second half of the season, but it's been far from dominant as well. And when you do not have a run game that you can rely on really heavily in that part of the field, it becomes more difficult to move the ball. It's already a condensed space. There's more defenders in a confined area, and that makes moving the ball through the air more challenging. On top of that, I think another factor is while it's benefited the Green Bay offense that really on any given play, Jordan Love can go anywhere with the football, I think in that part of the field, it could be more helpful to have kind of your go-to option, your player that in most instances can win in the passing game and that you can go to. There's been times where Dontavian Wicks has been that player, Jane Reed's been that player, Christian Watson's been that player, Romeo Doubs has had red zone success, but it's been a little bit of everyone versus just, again, that one player. And the run game, that element, that's not the be all end all for the Packers' ups and downs in the red zone overall this season. They ranked 21st in red zone success. So this is not just a recent problem they've run into, but it's something that they've dealt with the entire season. And so the passing game, that running game aspect, the inability to execute, as LaFleur and others said, like those are all just factors combined. Unfortunately, as is the case in football, there isn't that one thing that you can point to and say, all right, this is it. This is what we have to fix. It's a culmination of things. But Packers' red zone offense much, much improved against Carolina, and that contributed in a big way to their victory. All right, two more. Anders Carlson, 2 for 2 on field goal attempts, including the game winner with 19 seconds left on the clock. I mentioned this in my instant takeaways. We don't know when Anders Carlson comes on the field necessarily what's going to happen. Is it going to be a make? Is it going to be a miss? Extra point, field goal? Doesn't matter. We've seen it all this season. But where he has thrived is bouncing back. There hasn't been a game this season that I believe where he's had 2 misses in a single game. Now, he's had a number of games where he's had a miss, but he's done a really, really good job of not letting one miss compound and turn into a second or a third. And that goes back to what Rich Bisaccia has talked about when discussing Carlson since the draft. One of the big reasons that the Packers wanted to draft him, one of the big reasons that Rich Bisaccia liked Carlson so much during the pre-draft process was, as Bisaccia put it, his mental makeup, his ability to bounce back after a missed kick, his ability to make a big kick when the game's on the line. And repeatedly throughout the season, Anders Carlson has shown us that bounce back ability, not letting a previous kick affect what's coming. And in this game, ended up being crucial. Hit a 53-yarder in the first half, and then that aforementioned game winner at the end. So it's been a very, very up and down season for Anders Carlson, which, we go back to the summer, whether it's LaFleur, Bisaccia, Brian Gutekunst, this was expected. What we've seen from Carlson in terms of that hit and miss ability, that's to a degree what's expected with a rookie kicker. But I think the part that we all have to be excited about is he's come through with some big kicks, and he hasn't let, again, the misses compound and turn into a second, turn into a third within a given game. And of course, in a 3-point game, two field goal makes ended up being really, really crucial in the Packers winning this one. Last one, Packers, according to the New York Times playoff predictor, have a 28% chance heading into Week 17 of making the playoffs. This upcoming game against Minnesota is a de facto playoff game. The loser is pretty much eliminated from playoff contention. If the Packers win out their final 2 games, their playoff odds, according to the New York Times playoff predictor, jumps to 95%. Teams that the Packers need to lose, Seattle, Los Angeles, Atlanta, New Orleans, can all help the Packers' playoff odds by losing both of their final 2 games. The big one to watch in this scenario is going to be the LA Rams, and they do have a Week 18 matchup with the San Francisco 49ers. But Packers playoff odds at the moment currently sit at 28%, and like I said, this game coming up against Minnesota, basically a playoff game. If they lose, the Packers are effectively eliminated from the playoffs. So there you have it, my friends. Those are my behind the numbers, the key stats figures that you need to know about from their performance against Carolina. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel, and you can find all my work over at Packers Wire. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and as always, go Pack Go.